For today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by the legendary Nick Telson, exited founder of Design My Night and now founder of Trumpet and Horseplay Ventures. We read a lot in the headlines about huge startup exits, but a lot of the time they're not as glossy as they seem. Nick has been incredibly honest and direct with his experience, the impact it had on him personally, but also on his team who held equity in the business. So if you're thinking about starting a business, scaling your business, or exiting your business, this episode is for you. So without further ado, Nick Telson.
Yeah, I mean, the start is super exciting. If you haven't quit your job yet and it's a side hustle, we met every evening, we met every weekend, and we were just buzzing off the idea and building something and building a brand. I think it's just raw excitement, and that's what it should be. If you're not excited and buzzed off the early days when you haven't got any real responsibility, then you're in for a rude awakening, I think.
Nick Telson, goodness gracious me, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. This is the first ever episode of the Stamp Your Mark podcast. We're absolutely delighted to have you on. So, I would love to start from the start of your journey. Where is that for you?
I think probably L'Oreal. I think because that was quite pivotal for me to, on the one hand, learn how to do business, but on the other hand, realise that that's not the path I wanted for the rest of my life. And I loved working there. It's an awesome company. I did marketing. It's a very marketing-led company. But I got to a certain level that when I looked at who was above me, I just thought, actually, is that what I want for my next 5 years? So it was at that point that we then decided, myself and my best mate from uni, Andrew, decided to try and do our own thing.
Mm-hmm. And had that been something in your mind for a while?
Not for me. So Andrew has, since I've known him at uni and we met week one, he's always been very much, I want to do my own thing. He worked at Accenture, so way more corporate than L'Oreal. But for me, I've never had a burning desire to do it. So my dad's always been, he would just call himself a businessman, but today he would be called an entrepreneur. My mum too. So I've always been surrounded by it. But part of me actually liked the safety of corporate, and I really enjoyed working for big brands. Like, it's really fun. Big brands that you see out there. I met Davina in the office once and had a chat with her, and you get big budgets. So all of that is great fun. Corporate's not as bad as entrepreneurs will make you think. But it was that point that I was just like, actually, I love marketing. Do I want to become a general manager and just do spreadsheets? No. What do I do next?
Yeah.
And the startup seemed like the obvious route. So yeah, as people are surprised, it's not always been this burning passion for me to be a founder.
Okay, I love that. I've got so many follow-up questions. So first of all, in terms of entrepreneurship, you said your dad was always a businessman, but these days would call him an entrepreneur. I think that speaks to the wider, glamorization of entrepreneurship, the hustle porn that we see the entire time. And you also said that, corporate isn't as bad as entrepreneurs make you think it is. Do you really believe that there's a big problem in that, or is it just an observation?
I don't think there's a problem. I think it's awesome now that starting your own business, A, has become a lot easier than it ever has been, and B, is something that people want to do fresh out of school. When I left school, it was you go to university, you then go on a graduate scheme and then get your corporate job and stay there for 20 years and get your pension. And I think that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the startup world is just another vertical within that. So if the corporate world, or there's lots of other verticals you can go to in life, and startups has just become a much more accessible one. And that's what I say to a lot of kids that I've done talks at schools and stuff is, you don't necessarily have to be a founder either to go into startups. So like if you love the idea of startups and the world of startups, you can apply for a job at a startup and learn, you know, the groundings by working in a startup, and then the idea might come to set up your own. So I think that's also a big path that people can follow.
For sure. And so before we touch on Design My Night and how that started, what did you take away from L'Oreal? If you had to condense that into a couple of key things, key learnings, key screw-ups that you witnessed and then learned from?
I think the obvious one with corporates is not to go slow. So I make myself sound very old here, but you know, there was a big debate in my division about, so there's websites called Look Fantastic, and so they're like where you buy shampoos, etc., which had just sort of were becoming big at that time. And there was a big debate internally about online versus offline. And you know, the wheels to turn to get these products to go on these websites was just painful. You know, just move quickly, which, you know, is what, when now exited founders do consultancy for corporates, that's one thing they always say they want, is how can you have that startup mentality in a corporate, which is, a lot of it is just moving quickly and taking risks. So that, you know, that was annoying working in a corporate. What I benefited from was how to manage a P&L. You know, I was in charge of a 20-30 million pound brand, and you have to manage that properly, and you have to have manage your budget, manage your P&L. You can't just spend gratuitously. You have to report up as well every quarter. So that really gave me a good grounding in business. I'm also awful at maths, like awful. I actually got the lowest score ever for the L'Oreal graduate recruitment in maths.
Wow.
Ever. And HR pulled me in at the end of the day and said, we're in a bit of a dilemma with you. Your marketing one was one of the best ones we've seen, but your maths was literally the worst score we've ever had. And I just said to them, look, I know how to use Excel. You know, I don't know why you give me a GCSE maths test. I'm not going to need that in business. So I convinced them, luckily, to take me on.
Brilliant. Love it. I think there are going to be so many people hearing that who will really resonate, because they see you as a very successful founder and operator and now investor. And you're out here saying, I was awful at maths and I was one of the worst at maths. So I think that's brilliant. And I appreciate you sharing that. In terms of launching Design My Night, there are so many steps before you actually say, okay, cool, it's time to quit our jobs, or okay, cool, it's time to take this seriously. Do you remember any of the initial conversations where in your brain you started to think, hold on, this safe world of corporate life that I have now may start to be a thing of the past?
I think when we came up with the idea, so I won't go into the full story, but we were in New York, Andrew and myself, and saw a website that was similar-ish. And we also spoke to the hotel concierge, who asked us lots of questions before we went out, like, where do you want to go? What type of night do you want? What type of music? And we can't remember exactly whose idea it was, but one of us said, oh, wouldn't that be great to have in London? And I'm born and bred London, and so I knew about going out in London. I was in my early 20s, and I thought, yeah, there's nothing really like that in London. And there was Time Out at the time, but never really nailed digital Time Out. And at that same time, there was the big rise of the cocktail bar. Again, sounds crazy now. But, cocktail bars where you would go, you would book a table and you'd be treated like restaurants. That wasn't really in London apart from the hotels. So it all was like a perfect storm. And we parked it and thought, okay, well, let's finish our holiday. When we get back, we'll do some research and, we're sure there'll be something that it already exists, and there wasn't. Mm-hmm. So pretty quickly we were like, let's give it a go. And we did a year building it while staying at our job. So we didn't jump immediately.
Mm-hmm. And any particular conversations that spring to mind beyond those ones, where you had that, sinking feeling of stress or excitement or anxiety?
I think it was mainly excitement. I think what we did, and good advice for anyone, is we left our jobs on very good terms. I was on great terms with HR at L'Oreal, and I said, look, I'm not leaving to a competitor. I want to follow my dream of doing a startup. And they just said, look, if we wish you well. If it doesn't go right, you're always welcome back here. And Andrew did the same at Accenture. So it was more just the self-pressure of this having to work.
Yeah.
Versus, God, what happens financially if this doesn't work? So we had that cushion.
Okay, amazing. I love it. The reason I'm spending some time talking about those moments is because I feel something that is lost within the entire kind of discussion around entrepreneurship is what it was actually like to make that decision. What were the conversations you had? How did it feel? And so on. Because the way your life looks now, or the way your life looked, even a year or 2 years into Design My Night, was extremely different from when it was just the two of you bouncing off what ifs.
Yeah, I mean, the start is super exciting. If you haven't quit your job yet and it's a side hustle, we met every evening, we met every weekend, and we were just buzzing off the idea and building something and building a brand. Which is why we're now doing a venture studio out the whole other side, is because we sat down and thought, what do we love? Well, we love coming up with ideas, validating ideas, building a brand, building a product. I'm sure we'll get onto it. The running of the company is a whole different level, which is something we didn't want to take on yet. I think it's just raw excitement, and that's what it should be. If you're not excited and buzzed off the early days when you haven't got any real responsibility, then you're in for a rude awakening, I think.
Nice. Again, is that something that you kind of passionately believe, something you share with the people that you invest in? If you are not kind of guns blazing levels of passionate and excited about what you're doing in the early days, then that should be a sign that you're doing the wrong thing?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm always very frank with if I'm mentoring or investing, and whatever anyone says, it's incredibly hard work, and to get something off the ground requires a lot of hard work and effort and dedication. So if the early years before burnout or potential burnout, you haven't got that fire, then it's probably not the right thing for you to do. Okay,
so moving on to the running and the scaling then of Design My Night, what are the main things that come to mind when I ask about that?
I think for us, the culture was very important. And again, bearing in mind, we set it up 10 years ago, where culture now, rightly so, is huge and often talked about and paramount. We were sort of competing with the Googles of this world back then, where working in a startup didn't seem as cool. And you were like, okay, well, I can go to Google and get free lunch, dinner, breakfast. There's a gym. Why do I just come to your crappy little office? And I get no perks at all. Why would I do that? So for us to get people in on our vision, especially sort of the first 10 hires, we really wanted to surround ourselves with people that were in it for the long run, that passionately believed in Design My Night, and wanted to be leaders. And they might not necessarily have been leaders at that time, but what I said to all of our early employees is, you are all hopefully going to be the managers of the future when we scale, which is in the main how it did turn out, luckily. So that was super important for us. And then building a culture of just openness and trust. Andrew and I were always very open with progress of the business, and we maintained that right until exit. So we were always very transparent on the positives, the negatives, things we were concerned about, things we were super excited about. We would break it down by product. So for us, that openness, that everyone could trust that we were doing the right thing by them and by the company. And a lot of people we gave options to as well. So, we really wanted them to benefit from the success of the business as well.
Okay. Brilliant. So I've got a question on options, but I also want to touch on this idea of hiring leaders, because ultimately, you know, when you're hiring somebody, regardless of if it's 2 interviews or 3 interviews or even 4, when you're hiring that early stage and you don't really have a lot to show for your business and your values and who you are, how do you get that right? Is there a secret sauce?
I think it's just you know, in the early years, it's sharing the vision and getting them excited as the founders are excited. And, you know, for us, you know, we hired quite young as well. So, you know, we really wanted to get them buzzed about forging a career. So, you know, a lot of them hadn't had a proper career yet. So, you know, we were like, well, come here, we're going to work very closely with you on management and, you know, P&Ls and, you know, the business stuff. And hopefully while you're here, you will forge a proper career. And, you know, it's almost like the PayPal mafia. They've all gone on and done lots of other stuff. You know, I would say to, you know, my first customer success hire, you know, I want you to be joining Slack in 10 years as the head of customer success. You know, I want you to find a career in customer success. I want you to find a career in account management. Dev is the only sort of different one. Like, you obviously need to hire people that can do the job there and then. We did have some juniors, but, you know, with Dev as well, you just need to get building and get stuff done. But it really was just that feeling of we are in this together. We are in this small, tiny office together. You know, our first office was on Oxford Street, but the Tottenham Court Road end in an old illegal language school, which was literally like 5 meters by 5 meters.
Wow.
No WeWorks or anything. But it was just so much fun. We were in this little room together. We were on the edge of Soho. We'd go out for drinks every night. We even made like a huge banner and hung it out the window. So then we were like, we've got a banner on Oxford Street. So it's just about just getting them really excited. And, you know, they were just passionate about Design My Night as we were.
Mm-hmm. And so just that idea of you literally hanging a banner outside of the window, I love that. Were there any other moments where you just thought to yourself, ooh, is this the right thing to do?
I mean, one of the biggest mistakes we made, which was one of our biggest decisions, which I haven't often talked about, was we launched a deals product quite early on. It's called Design My Night Deals, great with branding, which was around the time of Groupon. And we were like, oh, well, let's do a Groupon for bars. So if 20 of you pay £5 for this cocktail, then that activates the deal and you can go to this cool bar and get a £5 cocktail instead of a £10 cocktail. And we're really umming and ahhing about it, and we decided to do it. We burned a lot of our cash building that product as well, and it just didn't work, mainly because we didn't have a big enough audience we sort of negated that part of Groupon, like how huge they were. So that was like a big mistake. We drained a lot of our cash and time and effort into that. So we just had to pick everyone up and go again. And another one was when Google changed their algorithm. So they changed it, I think it was called to Penguin or something, which totally changed the algorithm. And that was back in the day when you could do a lot of black hat techniques in Google. And we'd hired an agency who we didn't know what they were doing, but they were getting us up the ranking, but doing it dodgily. And then literally we came in the next morning, Google had changed to Penguin, and every morning we used to go and check analytics, and our analytics literally fell off a cliff, and we were like, oh, analytics must be broken. We'd check back later, and we did, still nothing. And then we started looking into it and we were like, crap, like what's happened here? Spoke to the agency, fired the agency, and we lost about a year's worth of traffic. So we then had to just sort of rebuild our whole infrastructure, redo all of our content again. Andrew and I learned SEO. We went away and just studied SEO. We're like, okay, we're going to do this in-house now. And it became easier as Google actually cleaned up their act. It's what content should be, just great, relevant, fresh content, which we could do really well on nightlife. But yeah, we lost about a year's worth of traffic from that one morning.
Wow. And so what was the size of the business in terms of revenue? Were you guys doing 50 grand a month, 500 grand a month at the time? How big was this?
The revenue wasn't necessarily huge then, we might have been in like, the 10, 20 grand a month. We didn't have the software then. But because we didn't have the software, our model was a pure traffic play. So we needed, millions of people on the site to then sell advertising and make bookings and stuff. So that was our bread and butter, traffic. That was our like North Star metric, was traffic, which is why we checked it every morning. And it literally fell off a cliff. It was probably our proudest moment as well. We like freaked out for a couple of hours, and then we thought, okay, well, we need to fix this now. And we just got on with it, didn't panic, learned SEO, and thought, okay, well, it's happened now, let's just crack on. So I look at that time, I can see it in my head going into that office, like as wow, but also very proud that we just flipped the switch and just got on with it.
Brilliant. How does it feel to now be able to look back and think, whoa, that was such a small thing that at the time was absolutely everything? Are you able to then take that forwards with you from a resilience standpoint and say, yeah, that hit me, but I survived. Therefore, the next, roadblock is one, that I can get over as well.
Yeah, resilience is a funny one. I mean, you're going to come up a lot with lots of different obstacles of varying degrees of magnitude. I don't think you can fully prepare yourself for like a big blip. I think that's where having a co-founder for me was very important. We would often lift the other one up if the other one was down, and vice versa. And sometimes it's good just to talk it out if something wrong has happened, just to actually get it out of your head and talk about it in the open. So we were always quite resilient, and we are quite resilient as characters. But yeah, I don't think we took the resilience from one obstacle and brought it through to the next one. I think you just deal with each one head on.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. And so you've spoken about the culture of being a team who are really in it together, and you also spoke about options. And that you gave your employees options. So what did that look like once you exited? I'm sure the people listening are familiar, they know that it was a successful exit. What details can you share about the size of that exit and the impact that it had on the people in the team?
Yeah, so from a culture point of view, I think it was very important. Not only the practical side of being able to hire expensive talent cheaper, which is obviously one of the main reasons of having options, but also that we really wanted everyone to feel part of our journey with us. And by the time we exited, probably about 90%, we had a team of about 90, all had options in the business. So from a cultural point of view, it was super important. We were also, I think advice for founders when they have options is a lot of employees don't know what the hell options are, and you can talk figures at them, but it sort of just goes over their head. But actually what you're giving them is huge, not necessarily financially all the time, but I'm giving you a part of this company for free today. Mm-hmm. So we really made the concerted effort to sit down one-on-one with every single person and talk through exactly what this meant, and tried to make it real for them as well. So we said, look, we're giving you X number thousands of shares in Design My Night today. That is worth X today. So I'm giving you 25 grand today worth of shares. Our vision is to exit. So if we exit for what we hope we're going to exit for, those shares might be worth 300 grand in 5 years, and you will get that in your bank account minus a bit of tax. So when you make it real for people, then they're like, oh, okay, I fully understand that, rather than just like, oh, I've given you 4,000 shares in Design My Night, that right. we might exit one day. We were always very open that we were building to exit. And what that meant, so we exited, I can't give the exact figure, but we exited Design My Night for $25 to $40 million. And it made some people wealthy. It allowed a lot of people to put a deposit down on a flat, That was probably the proudest moment for me, was taking, once we'd exited and, explained the exit, we then pulled all of them in one-on-one again, and said, oh, remember that thing we talked about 3 years ago? Okay, well, tomorrow you're going to get 80 grand in your bank account. And it's game changing for people. People literally would, go and buy a property when they would nowhere being able to afford to buy a property. So, it made it really real, and it was really emotional, and it was really exciting, and I absolutely loved that moment. And even down to, small numbers, an executive that joined maybe a year ago still getting 5 grand in their bank account is a huge deal. So that was really exciting for us.
That is golden. That is golden. Were there any particular comments from the people on your team? Any particular WhatsApp messages where you kind of just read it and think, "Whoa, this is really big for them. Like, this is a big moment."
I think it was just the emotion that they showed. It's very rare that they loved working at Design My Night as well. So it was never a chore. I think some of them might have had options in the back of their mind. Should I leave? Should I not? But in the main, everyone really enjoyed working at Design My Night. So it was more just the emotion of this journey's now over with us, and you've got this, very large sum of money. So, there were tears and hugs and excitement, and we had a Christmas party quite soon after because we sold it in November. So that was very emotional as well. And we were always very connected with our team. So, they always looked at us as like older brothers. So, we'd helped them throughout 5, 6, 7 years of ups and downs. And, we've had tears and hugs and sadness and anger and disappointment. We've seen it all with all the members of the team. So that was just a really nice end to it, that it wasn't just Andrew and I leaving with money in our back pocket. It was everyone, because it was a team effort.
So relating to the exit of Design My Night, I found that, I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who have exited their business. When I see the news on LinkedIn, I always message them, and I meet people, and I'm fortunate enough that a lot of the time they say, sure, let's chat. And I ask questions which could be quite rude for the first time asking them, but I think, YOLO, why not? And I would say in 99% of the times they answer. And my question is always, was it actually a good exit? Was it actually successful? And we've had this conversation, and you explained, things worked out really well. Have you had the same experience when you speak to other entrepreneurs? And is there a wider point to be said there on how things are always going to look glossy from the outside, even if there is an awful fallout with the co-founder, investors leave last minute, or they put up a fuss, and so on?
Yeah, a successful exit is very different to different people, and I always say that. And after I've invested in a company, and we can stop the BS, they've got my cash in the bank, so they don't need to stick to script. I often ask, okay, what do you actually want from this business now? Because I need to know so I can help you. If you want to build a £30 million exit and leave in 3 years versus a £60 million exit and leave in 5 years, or if you genuinely want to be here for 15 years and take a global and build a unicorn, and or do you want to stay and run it for ages? So a successful exit is very different for different people. Andrew and I were very clear with each other what we wanted out of Design My Night. It was good that we were on very similar pages in terms of time and money that we wanted out from it. We had the opportunity to take it to America and raise more money, but that would have been like another 5 years, and we just didn't want to do that. So that's why it was the right time to exit for us. It rarely looks like it does, on the front page of the magazine. That is the nature of social media, full stop, in this generation, unfortunately. Some exits could be just equity. Don't forget, I've seen some companies I won't name that they've IPO'd, and you can't, as founders, you can't sell your shares. You're locked in for a certain while, and then the price has crashed. So they IPO'd this $6 billion company, and then it crashes, and it's worth a few hundred million, but by the time you're IPOing, the founders don't own much of that business. And actually, I know some that have left with less than Andrew and I from companies that IPO'd, which is nuts.
Wow.
Which is actually nuts. So yeah, it doesn't always seem like it is. But it's just a very personal thing on as you said, what is a good exit and what is a bad exit. It could be a personal situation or it's financial. Andrew and I were very clear that a financial was the main goal for us to do Design by Night, and we're not ashamed of that. Money's a bit of a dirty word nowadays, but we wanted to become financially free from Design by Night to then go on and do lots of other stuff that we wanted to. So yeah, for us it was great. It was a long journey. It took us a year to exit. It nearly fell through on the last day. Literally, we were meant to sign the papers at 8 a.m. and we didn't sign them till about 6, 7 p.m. There was something that happened and it literally nearly fell through on the last day. So that was interesting. But apart from that, it was a very happy exit for us.
Okay, brilliant. So much good stuff in there. Really interesting to hear your kind of thoughts and experiences. So moving on, let's talk about, post Design by Night, the now. How would you describe, yourself, almost your job title and your job spec for what you do both at Horseplay, at Trumpet, and as an angel generally and as a mentor?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I think the funny thing is that at dinner parties with my mates or mates of mates, when I was at Design by Night, I was always the first people would want to ask questions. Oh, I use Design by Night, or what are the best bars in London? And, there was always something to talk about, and it was very relatable to people, Design by Night. So since leaving, Design by Night was my identity for 10 years. And, my mid-20s to my mid-30s, that was Design by Night. So it was tough. And I've mentioned it to you before, like those first few weeks, I was just totally lost. I woke up the next morning, everyone in the world would think, oh, you look at your bank account and you've hit the jackpot. But actually I was just like, what the hell do I do now? I'm like early, mid-30s. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve in an exited startup. What's my purpose now? And you can have all the money in the world, but if you haven't got any purpose to wake up to, because buying things is all great, but that's just a dopamine hit that goes very quickly. And you need a purpose to wake up every day. And I'd lost that because Design by Night was my purpose. I didn't have to check Slack. I didn't have to check my emails. I didn't have to worry that a client was complaining. In one way, I was totally at peace, which was great. But the second, I was just like, I literally don't know what I'm going to do now. So I gathered myself and Andrew and I have we want to keep doing things together. We're the perfect combination. So that's when we launched Horseplay, which was actually at the start of the pandemic. So again, the pandemic year, we just exited. We thought, okay, well, we're going to go on lots of holidays and just enjoy life and etc. But we were stuck at home. So I think it accelerated the next stage for us. So Horseplay we set up, which the idea of Horseplay was we wanted to create a brand around angel investing. So there's tons of angel investors out there that we're just all individual people, but none of them really have a brand. So a lot of people see Horseplay Ventures and think it's a VC, but it's not. It's Andrew and I's angel investing. And as part of that, we also want to help founders. So we speak to a lot of founders as part of it. A lot of founders just email us in questions, not even looking for funding, and we'll always get back to them. I do a lot of work from LinkedIn and webinars and accelerators where I mentor and coach founders as well, which I love. So we do all of that. Angel investing in itself is a funny one. It's great to have that exposure to all these different types of businesses and work with some amazing people. And we try and invest in amazing people. But then at the same token, it's not your business. And angel investing, while great, is frustrating at the same time. You can only be as involved as the founders want you to be involved. We would never overstep our mark. We make it very clear to founders that we're here to help. Like, we really want to help you. We've literally just done what you're going through, which resonates great with founders. But then when they're in the thick of it as well, they're often not thinking, oh, I'm going to pick up the phone and ask Nick something. So you're quite detached from the business, and it can be quite frustrating. So we've got now 53 investments across UK, US, LATAM and Africa. Most of them doing really well, which is great. Met some awesome people. There's some amazing founders, and I think there's going to be some wonderful journeys there as well. But what we've found this year is Andrew and I, okay, well, what do we love doing? And that's coming up with ideas. We've now built an amazing network to validate ideas and give it to us straight. So that's the idea for the Venture Studio, which we're launching out of Horseplay, which is Andrew and I will come up with an idea, we'll validate it, we'll fund it, we'll build it, we'll do the branding, we'll do the go-to-market, and then actually bring in a founder to run it. And our vision is to do one a year and be in a position where we have 10 to 15 companies that we've ideated and built, but then have let other people run it, with sort of working a lot closer with us than our angel investments would.
That's brilliant. And so you just recently announced on LinkedIn, didn't you, the news about Trumpet?
Yeah, so Trumpet will be, we haven't really said what it is yet, still keeping that under wraps. But yeah, Trumpet will be the first one out of the studio. We've just hired the founder for that, which I was really nervous about. I think that's the big problem with that model, is can you find someone awesome to run it? And I was overwhelmed with the applications we had. And we got down to the final 3, and I would have hired all 3 of them. Like, they were all exceptional. So yeah, Rory is the first founder that we've had. He actually starts on the 1st of December. We've gone and taken one of our devs from Design My Night, who's joining as our first dev for Trumpet as well. So they both start on the 1st of December. So we go again. The product probably won't launch until Feb. And it's in the sort of B2B sales space. So sort of our vision was, Canva came around for marketeers, Squarespace came and disrupted sort of e-commerce, Slack disrupted communications. There's lots, Xero and all of those have helped the financials, but there was no tools looking to revolutionize how you sell B2B. We still just send like a PowerPoint, which was created in the 90s. Or if you're really modern, you'll send a Loom, like video, but videos will expire quite quickly as well as a sales deck. So we're looking to digitize and revolutionize that process. It's a huge market. We've spoken to over 150 people in sales to ideate and come up with the first MVP. And yeah, we're super excited. We've just signed off the wireframes and the UX UI. It looks great.
Wow.
We've actually got an agency building it. So one of Andrew Wilkinson, who's a hero of mine, one of his agencies called Z1, they're actually building the product, and they're like product specialists. So we know the product's going to be sick. So we're really excited for that. And then we're launching another one, which I can't talk about yet, but that will be coming out probably March, April next year in the sports space.
Brilliant. I've got 1,003 questions to ask about that specifically, but I'm also mindful that we've only got a few minutes left. So people can follow you on all social media platforms. They can learn more about you on your website, and we'll leave all the links in the description. For now, I want to focus on the concept of legacy and leaving your mark on the world. Ultimately, this podcast is called Stamp Your Mark. So there's a big focus on what you leave behind once you've done it, and you have very much done it. And I follow you on LinkedIn. You go into the detail. You talk about the messages, the types of messages that land in your inbox every month. You talk about topics that are really close to you. You talk about salaries in a way that I've never seen other employers do. What is the reason for all of that? Why do you do that?
Well, I just think there's a lot of BS around on social media. I've actually cut all social media out of my life apart from LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a social media, but I use it for business purposes. So I don't use any other platform. And I feel a lot better for it. And I think with the, as we said at the top, the sort of the glorifying nature of startups now, I never want to put someone off doing a startup, but I also just want to be real with people. I don't want to say something just to get loads of likes and seem like the lovely guy who's following all the trends and saying all the right things. I like to give it straight and learn from people as well. So often if I'll put something out quite abrasive, people in the comments will maybe educate me on that as well. So we try and open a discussion, and I just see through the crap and just go like, this is what it is like to set up a startup. And I'm by no means the only person that's done it. There have been people way more successful than me, but I also want to show people that, you don't have to be in TechCrunch. You don't have to IPO to have set up a successful business. Like, there's a lot of us doing it that aren't glorified, like the big hitters raising hundreds of millions of dollars.
Brilliant. Love that. My final question to you before we finish is, what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self?
21-year-old? What was I doing 21? Actually, there was a post this came on LinkedIn, so it's not business related actually, and I commented on it, which got a lot of pickup, was come out. So I came out later, like in my mid to late 20s. And yeah, I would have said to my 21-year-old self, what are you doing? Just no one will give a shit, and you'll be a lot happier if you do. I'm super proud of what I've done at L'Oreal and Design My Night, and I wouldn't have changed that for the world, so I wouldn't give myself any advice on that. I'm really lucky with my friends and family as well. But for me, that was the one regret I've got in life, is just being me and being proud of me earlier.
I feel that brilliant, lovely, inspiring and empowering way to end. So thank you so much for coming on the show, our first ever guest. Hooray.
I'm honoured. Thank you for having me as your first guest.
That was
a
class.
joy. Thank you.